Asma, going back to, you talked something about, you mentioned women's rights and the role of women within Islam. There are a number of questions about that because people see a lot about, in the media and so forth, about women in Islam and oppression and so forth in different countries. What's happening, you might say a little more about what's happening within Islam, but also within Islam in America to address those issues. And as part of that, a number of people have asked about the hijab, burqa, and some people want to know, well, how is it that that isn't a sign of oppression? Others think, well, why do people think it's a sign of oppression? Why can't people choose to do that? We have other faiths wearing head coverings and so forth. So could you address those clusters of issues about women in Islam?
Sure. I'll speak briefly on some of them. I mean, one of my starting points with the very first question you asked was this idea of how Islam and how it's interpreted and applied is necessarily shaped by cultural context. And so I think that many of the things that people worry about are often products of that particular culture and the way that that is shaping the Islamic interpretations. And so in terms of my experience as a Muslim American, I think the one experience that I can speak most authentically about is the experience of Islam in America. And as I mentioned earlier, this web magazine that I started is really, it covers like a wide sort of cross-section of the Muslim American community in terms of a need to be authentic in our faith, or completely devoted to our faith, but at the same time struggling with issues that we don't really know how to fit when it comes to negotiating our faith with our lived realities. So all this is to say that there is ample room for diversity and reinterpretation, and so many of the things that in some sense can be considered as fundamentally wrong, as a violation of a fundamental human right, a lot of those things are really, unfortunately, abuses of the law. But the question really becomes, it's how are we defining these fundamental human rights and what is considered a violation of that? And in the context of the hijab and burqa, we see in some parts of the world, many governments are seeking to limit the ability to wear the burqa and the hijab, whether it be the Muslim majority country of Turkey or places like France and other countries in Europe. And I think in that case, many of the perspectives there is that this idea, that sort of this imposition of their own notion of what the hijab is. This idea that it necessarily has to be about subjugation of submissiveness of women. And it's important to kind of step back and to really, and to understand to what extent is that just an imposition of one's own biases. For me, I mean, coming from a religious freedom perspective, what I always advocate for is the ability of women to have religious freedom rights and to be able to believe and to be able to make their own religious choices. And many women who do wear the hijab and burqa do so of their own free will. And so I think, to me, a more authentic sort of embracing of the human rights of women is to allow them to make their own spiritual and religious decisions.
And that just brings up an important point about the difference between American law and other laws, including places in France where they have tried to say that young girls can't wear the hijab to school, for example. And in the United States, our Department of Justice has gone to bat for girls who would like to wear that to school. Of course, no one has to, but if they choose to, their rights are protected because in the United States, we locate our unity not in all looking the same or believing in the same faith, but rather in the freedom to make choices in matters of faith. That's what unifies us, is that freedom. And so it's another thing to be thankful for about our own country, I think, and to engage with others in other places to have good dialogues about what freedom truly means.